Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Professor's Lab. Today we have a fun and exciting treat for you guys, I hope. Coming out next week around this time, we did our Paldea one-shot, and if I've timed this correctly, this one's going to come out the week before. So we're going to do a Klawf raid one-shot. If you follow us over on our Instagram, you will know that this is coming. So what I want to do real quick is just kind of walk you guys through how I prepared for it. The first time that we tried to film it, it was very improv heavy, and your boy forgot to record the audio, so we're going to do it again. And I figured this time, rather than go in completely blind, not knowing what the players are playing, who they're bringing in, I basically let them pick sort of like right off the cuff who they were going to use. I figured we would use the sort of new releases that we are familiar with. We still don't know anything about them as of now. I'm sure that will change. We are getting closer and closer to spoilers and leaks, etc. All of this to say, if you know nothing about these Scarlet Violet releases and you want to keep it that way, we will be discussing a few of the newer Pokemon. Nothing specific, but aesthetics and sort of the general vibe of them. So if you don't want to even know that, maybe skip this and that one shot until the games are out and then come back and check these out at a later time. But for now, let me just talk to you guys real quick about sort of what we did, because longtime followers of this series and the channel in particular will know that we've been sort of field testing a bunch of stuff in the TOTS game in more recent sessions. No worries, I'm not going to spoil anything for that, but we've been giving the players some actual class abilities, and we're going to kind of continue that trend. I'm not going to get too in the weeds on why I picked certain things that I did. I'll just give you guys a quick once-over of sort of what to expect from some of the players. If things go to plan, we'll have 4 players. I have made 6 pre-made characters for them so that nobody has to worry about knowing all of my nonsense on top of their own new stuff. Everything in here is new for the players, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. Our first potential player character, which we might see, is Ezekiel. He's a police officer, and his partner is a Fido. I built Fido like a tank, so this is also going to be basically just a big video of me kind of walking through a thought process of making a Pokemon based entirely on a picture. So that'll be an interesting take. I'll be curious to see what you guys think about it. We won't do cards for all of these because these are just so rough and for a one-shot, and we don't know anything about them, so nothing about them will be accurate. I'm assuming. Watch me be thoroughly humbled and also correct. So we have Officer Ezekiel. He has the ability to expend his reaction and roll a hit die to reduce incoming damage against himself or an ally. That gives the player an opportunity to assist their Pokemon or someone else's. His partner being Fido. The only thing I know about Fido as of right now is that it's fairy type. So I gave it the ability Friend Guard to kind of tackle into the same ability that Officer Ezekiel has, his trainer. So allies within 10 feet of you take reduced damage equal to your proficiency bonus from all sources, but you don't get that benefit. So it's just your friends. It is very much a positioning matters critter with Friend Guard. It's got a reasonable AC and HP. As you'll notice for all of these, I might end up putting the stats on the screen just so you guys have a little bit of a visual here. But Fido, I gave an AC of 11 and 60 hit points. I just kept everything flat and easy because it's a one-shot. And I wanted a rough estimation of how difficult I should make this. So an AC of 11 and an HP of 60. Proficiency bonus is 2. I'm going to let the players, before we start, decide their standard array of stats. So 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. And I'm going to let them establish those as they will. whichever stat they put their 15 and their 13 into, I'm going to give them proficiency in the saving throw of that type. So I'm not going to focus too much on those right now, but we'll see. So the size of it is small because it just looks like a tiny little fella. Moves, I had to improvise because, again, we don't know anything about them at this time. That might be different at the time of release, so I'll be curious to see how that goes. But Fido, I gave Play Rough, super easy. A basic amount to hit, probably I'm thinking like 5, plus 5 to hit, and then 1d10 fairy damage with a 5-foot range. The other ability I went very silly with some of these, as we'll see, is Underproved. So Fido gains a +1 to attack and damage rolls for a minute. You can stack it up to 3 times. I just did that because the Great British Bake Off is really funny when Paul Hollywood says Underproved. So that's why Fido has Underproved. I was trying to think of other bread dough puns, and I was falling flat, so I went with Underproved instead. We also have a very test skeleton for Pokemon classes that we've been testing out. So I'm going to throw some of those in here as well to cover that really quickly, because again, these are a little rough. These aren't quite ready for the camera, so I'll just give you a quick gloss through. Our Fido is a tank. Specifically, our Fido is a staller. So if you've played competitive Pokemon, you will probably know what that means. This Fido is going to take a lot less damage than any of their allies, and they're going to be able to heal. They're going to be able to heal and recover some HP in combat. I'm not going to give them an item, but if I was going to give them an item, it would probably be leftovers. But we'll get into sort of item drops and stuff for this in a bit. I don't want to spoil anything just yet. But that is our first PC and their first Pokemon. So everybody's just going to have one. They can have one team member. This is going to be a very sort of group raid style combat one-shot. We have Ezekiel and Fido. Our next one, and I had a lot of fun with these names as well, is Fiorenzio. He is a scholar, a student of the past. So if Fiorenzio decides to make any history or arcana or religion checks for whatever reason during this one-shot, if he succeeds, he will also add an additional 1d4. He basically has guidance on those checks. I should really throw that in real quick. He's got guidance on those 3 checks, history, arcana, and religion. If he succeeds, he's going to gain a d6 inspiration die that he can use for himself or any of his friends. Because Fiorenzio is a student of the past. I gave Fiorenzio Smoliv. Smoliv, the only thing I know about it right now is that it's a normal and grass type. I don't know anything else. So we're going to go with that. The ability that I gave it is Flower Veil. The damage dealt by grass-type Pokemon within 10 feet of you cannot be resisted or reduced, and grass-type Pokemon in range are not affected by difficult terrain. At first blush, you're like, okay, that seems pretty average, but I do intend to throw a little bit of difficult terrain in the one-shot if nobody takes Smoliv. So if they have Smoliv, I won't have to bring it up because it'll be ignoring it, so it might seem like it's useless, when in fact, they're just going to completely like sidestep an entire difficulty curve. So that'll be kind of fun. I gave Smoliv an AC of 10 and an HP of 60. This one's not nearly as tanky as our Fido, but it still has a lot of hit points. Basically, the lower the AC, the higher the hit point count I gave it, because you're probably going to get hit by most attacks. But we'll cover that. Some of the Klawfs are a little bit underpowered, and then one of them is like super strong. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. The fake move I gave to Smoliv is Salve Olive. So like a salvo of olives. So all creatures within 10 feet of a point you designate within 15 feet of you must succeed a DC 12 Dex save or suffer 1d6 grass damage or 1/2 of that damage on a success. But yeah, there we go. Just a little olive pun. So basically he's going to fire off an olive that's going to explode into olive juice because I don't know what Smoliv is actually going to do. But that sounded funny to me. And our backup move is Leafage. Regular bonus to hit, probably like a +5. And 1d8 or so grass damage at a 10-foot range. Smoliv is kind of our sniper blaster, and we'll get into that because that, instead of being a tank, Smoliv is a blaster. Smoliv treats damage rolls of 1 as a 2, which I'm sure we will remember to do, as we always do. We remember all of our effects. And Bombardier is our subclass in the same way that we were a Staller for Fido. So the damage dealt by AoE attacks you make is increased by 1 for each target you affect. So you get an extra 5-foot range on your AoEs. That's why that 10-foot radius, 15-foot range toss is so extreme. You're going to do +1 damage for each target in range. So Smoliv is definitely our sort of spellcaster AoE fella. It's going to be launching fireballs made of olive juice. So that might be kind of fun. We'll see how that goes. Our next potential PC is Anthea, a Hex Maniac who has a Lechonk. This one is made for Tia. Tia might play in this one, and Tia really likes Lechonk, so we're going to try and make Lechonk fun, because we want Tia to have fun. So our Hex Maniac has one ability they can do once during this one shot, because this just needs to be tested a little bit. At some point during the one shot, Anthea is able to make an Arcana check. If she succeeds, you choose a Pokemon or a trainer within 60 feet of you and foresee their next action. If it's an attack, they have disadvantage on that attack against one of your allies. And if it's not, you can use your reaction to do something. We haven't quite figured that part out yet, so that's why I really wanted to test it. So you can use that ability once per long rest, so pretty much once during this one shot. But let's talk about Lechonk. Lechonk is just a special boy. Lechonk, I gave Thick Fat, which I know is very, very unoriginal, but it looks like it made sense to me. You get resistance to fire and ice damage, which might come in handy. AC of 10, HP of 60, proficiency bonus of 2, stats are up in the air, size of small. I had the most fun coming up with the move names for Lechonk, and honestly, I would not be mad if either of these found their way into the games. I would be so pleased. I gave it Gourmelee. It's a melee attack, 1d8 normal damage, but it deals +1 damage for each ally that is flanking with the target. So kind of like Winter's Beat Up, but I just figured like you run in there, you just start a melee, and you're a gourmand, so it's a Gourmelee. Why not? And our backup move is Truffle Toss. 1d6 normal damage, but a 10-foot range. So always like to give our new pals, especially for one-shots, a melee hit and a ranged attack. That way we can kind of give them an option no matter what. But Lechonk is a brawler, so really likes to be up in the fight, doing a lot of extra damage. So we've got an extra +1 bonus on attack rolls, and kind of like the Hunter Ranger, if you're attacking a Pokemon that is below the hit point maximum, you deal an additional +1 damage on all attacks. It's not a bonus 1d8, we're not doing the 1D&D rules here, but I wanted to give a little bit extra damage to Lechonk. Because Lechonk is normal type, gotta make sure that we're keeping up with our other pals. Our next potential PC is Riley. Riley is a combat medic. So Riley can use potions and healing remedies as a bonus action, which may come in handy, because we'll get into it. But Riley has a Sprigatito, which again, we know nothing about, but for the next 3, you're going to notice some themes. We've got Overgrow, so when your HP drops to 25% or below, grass damage you deal is increased by an additional die plus your proficiency bonus. So Sprigatito likes to live on the edge, which is why Riley's a combat medic, trying to keep them alive. Just so desperately. Sprigatito got an AC of 12 and an HP of 40, because Sprigatito looks a little bit more spry than a Lechonk. So I wanted to make sure that it's a little bit less likely that you'll hit Sprigatito, but if you do, it's not quite as tanky, and also, it's got a ton of ways to heal. But its first attack move is Leafage. Same deal as with Smoliv. Little bit of damage, a lot of bit of range. So 10-foot range, 1d6 grass damage. You can shoot it over your allies, stuff like that. So if everybody's flanking and you can't quite get in there, you can still do something. The fake move I gave Sprigatito may or may not fit at all. I just thought it was cool. I gave it a thing called Thorn Slash. So it's a melee attack. If this attack critically hits, which hopefully we'll see, the target becomes barbed, which means it suffers the attack's damage again at the end of its next turn. So if you do like max damage and you crit, you do like, 20 points of damage or something crazy. At the end of the target's next turn, it's going to take 20 damage again because we reward crits. But Sprigatito is a healer. When you go the healer route, whenever an ally within 10 feet of you recovers hit points, they gain your proficiency bonus as additional hit points. So for the purposes of this one shot, that would be 2. If they use a potion, instead of getting 20 health back, they're going to get 22, which might matter, but hey, any amount of hit points could mean the difference. Sprigatito is also a caretaker healer. Another thing that we really wanted to test out and see how it goes. If an ally drops to 0 hit points, it begins making death saves. As long as you are within 5 feet of them, they make those rolls at advantage. And if they succeed once, they stabilize and gain a hit point. And this ability kind of scales as you grow, but we're not going to see that aspect of it. So Sprigatito is basically it's the perfect combat medic partner, because if people start going down and you're entering that death spiral, Sprigatito is going to make it so that they're not dying. They're just downed. And when they're downed, they're probably going to get back up pretty quick, so you have extra time to get to them, making those healing remedies that much more useful. But that's our Riley and Sprigatito combat medic duo. We have 2 more to go through. We have Harald, who is a grunt. So he's basically our rogue archetype fella. If your Pokemon have advantage due to flanking with an ally, you get an additional +1 to your attack roll for each ally that's surrounding it. So if you can get 2 or 3 allies within 5 feet of the same enemy, it's very, very likely you're going to hit. Kind of getting into that sort of fighting dirty mentality. So no sneak attack here, but almost guaranteed damage, which is pretty good. Harald has a Quaxley, because this was funny to me. I love the idea of a grunt with a Quaxley. It's got Torrent, so same deal as Overgrow here. When your HP drops to 25%, any water damage you deal is increased by an additional die and your proficiency bonus. Now, in our lost session that we did, because it'll probably end up somewhere, we might throw it up on the Patreon, but fair warning, the audio quality is very, very bad. We did get to test run a Quaxley and a Sprigatito with no trainer abilities. And the players built them from like the ground up right as we sat down to play, so I had no idea what their power level was gonna be. So that's kind of why we're going this route this time. But we did see a Sprigatito and a Quaxley out in the field. We had a lot of fun with them, so I wanted to make sure that they were an option for the second time through. But I wanted them to be different because some of the players will be returning. So Quaxley has Water Gun, 2d4 water damage at a 10-foot range, and Water Wing, because I got to do something with it. It's got 1d10 water damage at a 5-foot range, but if you crit, you drop the target's armor class by 1. Kind of getting across the sort of grunt fight style. But Quaxley themselves, they are a speedster, so they get a +5 to their movement speed, so they can move or fly 35 feet and around. So they can really kind of control the battlefield, getting the most out of that flanking ability. Quaxley can also disengage as a bonus action, and if it does, an ally in range can take an opportunity attack against a creature within 5 feet of you, and they deal +1 damage if they hit. So the whole idea of Quaxley is you run in, hit somebody with your action, bonus action disengage, and then an ally hits them as well. So Quaxley is definitely the sort of sleeper killer of the squad, so it'll be cool to see if anybody rolls with Quaxley. Last but not least, we have Stanislav. Stanislav is an ace trainer. This is the only overlap of abilities that we have from the TOTS game. If you are caught up, some of these may or may not be familiar to you. Some of these ace trainer abilities may have been mentioned. So one of them is quite basic, I hate to say, but it's true. Pokemon that you catch have a +1 to hit on all of their attack rolls and saving throws. So by basic, I just mean it's gonna be very useful. You just won't hear it called out that much. And last but not least, we have Fuecoco. Fuecoco is Stanislav's partner. It's got Blaze, same deal as Overgrow and Torrent. HP drops to a threshold, fire damage gets boosted, an AC of 10 and HP of 60. Stats we'll figure out later. Ember, the bonus to hit for everything, I've set it a +5. We'll get into just why in a second, but Ember's going to have a +7 to hit. So Fuecoco is the most likely to hit round after round, but we are fighting some Klawfs. So that might come into play with a little bit of resistance, but I don't think I'm going to do resistance for a one-shot because that's not as fun. If somebody randomly picks Fuecoco and suddenly is doing half damage to everything in the raid, kind of feels bad, man. But Fuecoco has Ember, a +7 to hit, 1d8 fire damage, 10-foot range, and Flare Charge. So not Flame Charge and not Flare Blitz, but Flare Charge. +7 to hit, 1d4 damage. Sounds a little bit low, but stay with me. For every 10 feet you move before reaching your target, add an additional 1d4 fire damage. I gave Fuecoco 35 feet of movement. So if you can game it so that you can get a little bit of extra movement on your turn, you might be able to get an extra 1d4 damage on there. So that might be kind of fun. Fuecoco is a brawler, which keen-eared viewers will remember. That is what Lechonk was. But where Lechonk was sort of a cleaner, deals extra damage if they're missing hit points, Fuecoco is a sweeper, designed to set up with flanking. There's a lot of synergy between these Pokemon. If they are working together, it does reward the players for thinking like a team and less like an individual. So if you have advantage on an attack roll due to flanking with an ally, you deal an additional +1 damage on your attacks. So that's the players. That was like a 20-minute breakdown of the players. That took a lot longer than I thought it would, longer than intended. But hopefully that was interesting for you guys to sort of see the thought process of building the teams. So that is what their teams are going to look like. That's what they're going to be capable of. The trainers are going to have a couple abilities that they can use to make things run a little bit more smoothly. We're also going to try something super bizarre. If this doesn't work well, you'll never see it again, and if it does, we might bring it back at some point. I'm going to give each of the players 3 cards. And one card is going to be a critical fail. One is going to be an ace or a crit, and then the other, that third card, is going to be a 10. And I'm going to let them at any time offer each other a card in exchange for like a retroactive advantage or disadvantage. So if they roll a die and they didn't hit, they rolled like a 5 or something, somebody can offer them to flip a card. And if they flip a card, they can replace their die roll with whatever's on the card. So it could be an auto crit, an auto fail, or a probable hit. Because a 10 plus 5 will hit everything, but not everybody's middling roll is going to be a 10. Some of them are going to be like an 8, maybe a 9. That way they can't just sort of game theory it out and figure this whole thing out. And we might do it where you have to pick a card from somebody, and then you can't pick a card from that same person until everybody else is at the same number of cards chosen. Because again, if you flip somebody's and they flip their critical fail, your odds are pretty good that you're going to hit if you pull one of their cards. And you got a 50-50 shot at a guaranteed crit. So I think we'll have them kind of bounce between each other. That way you have to kind of work together. When I run one-shots, I'm very big on inspiration and giving that out. We did it a lot in the test run, probably too much, but keep an eye out for that. I do enjoy allowing trainers to inspire each other or each other's Pokemon. I do not let them inspire their own unless they have earned that inspiration in some other way. So there's going to be a lot of little tools and tricks for the players to use. So they're going to have those cards that they can cash in. They're going to have inspiration they can earn and give out pretty freely. And we'll see how that goes. Our actual raid, what we're going to do is wave 1 is going to be a couple Klawfs. And by a couple, I do mean exactly 3. So technically a few. We're going to have a few Klawfs. AC I'm up in the air on. It'll be 12 or 13. I tend to keep it a little bit vague for one-shots again, because you want a one-shot to keep moving. And if they're just rolling like garbage, you kind of want them to still be able to hit. So a relatively easy first wave. 3 Klawfs, 12 to 13 AC, 32 hit points. However, these Klawfs are completely unaffected by weakness or resistance. I'm going to give them some kind of weird thing. Haven't quite figured out what that'll be yet, but We'll find out. By the time this is up, we'll have already filmed the one-shot, and it'll be going up next week, so we'll see. So that wave 1 of Klawfs is going to be kind of funky looking. They'll have something going on that maybe somebody can look into and figure out why. But they're not going to have weaknesses or resistances, and that's going to kind of inform the next wave and maybe even the wave after that. But they got 3 Klawfs, pretty easy to take down. If they manage to take out wave 1 of Klawfs, I'm going to have little crystals kind of fall from the sky, because the whole point of this is like it's a big geological survey. And they're running into a cave full of Klawfs, and they want to clear it out because they want the Terra crystals that are in there. Because that's kind of the new hotness that we wanted to sort of broach, because we're definitely not putting that in the TOTS game. So I wanted to kind of get it all out here. So yeah, we've got wave 1 of Klawfs, pretty easy. They kill those. Some crystals fall down. There's going to be a crystal for each of them depending on who they're playing. And it's going to give them an extra dive damage on all of their attacks so that we can kind of scale up for wave 2. They can get a sense of progression. Because wave 2 is going to be 5 Klawfs. And if we went with 12 AC, then in wave 2 they'll be at 13. If we went with 13 in wave 1, they'll be at 14 in wave 2. That's a very complicated way of saying I'm going to increase the AC by 1. And there's going to be 5 of them instead of 3. Their HP, however, is going to be 70. So this wave might be a bit of a slog. So we'll find out. But I'm hoping that an extra dive damage on all of their attacks, a little bit of teamwork, a couple cards, should be able to pull them through this with little to no issue. So if they manage to defeat the wave 2 Klawfs, I'm going to throw in a couple Terra Klawfs as well, just fair warning. It'll depend on sort of who gets chosen, because these are just going to be handed out mostly sight unseen. I'll probably ask the players what Pokemon they want to use, and they'll know nothing else about them. But depending on who they're using, I'll give 2 of these Klawfs a Terra Crystal, and when they defeat them, I'm going to let them pick it up if they want it. So we'll figure it out. The types for those, I'm just probably going to choose in the moment what they are and see kind of what makes sense. One will probably be good, one might not work, because for wave 3, we're going to fight a super ultra mega alpha Klawf. I have not decided on its title. It'll probably be different every time I say it because I know myself. So alpha mega Klawf has a 15 AC. So the players need to roll a 10 or higher to hit. That seemed reasonable to me. You've got roughly a 50% shot to hit. Fuecoco's got a +7, so they only have to roll an 8 or higher to hit. But again, we don't want a creature with 250 hit points to be impossible to hit, or this is never going to end, because they are using base level baby Pokemon. Everybody's level 5 for this, so I don't want to destroy them. I want them to have fun and kind of test out some of these new moves. So if anybody picks up those Terra Crystals from wave 2, I'm going to give them a new move right now. And I'm also going to have more of those little crystals fall from the sky. A lot of folks are asking, and I'm going to cover this in the next live video that I'm going to film after this, but that's going to go up in like 2 weeks. I'm going to give them Z moves for this one shot. I know Z moves probably aren't in Scarlet and Violet, but they're also definitely not in the TOTS game. And a lot of folks are kind of curious how I would handle them. So I'm going to do it. So what we're going to do is when they get the second half of their Z crystal that falls from the sky, and they get these Terra crystals that they can put on their heads, the Terra crystals are going to give them Terra Beam. It's going to do 2d8 of whatever damage we end up making those Terra crystals. It'll be the same thing as what the Klawfs have. So one will be bad against the Alpha Klawf, and one will be super effective at first, at least, because we'll get into that. So when we have these Terra crystals, we have our Z moves. Terra crystals are just going to do 2d8. The basic moves that they're going to have are going to be doing 2 additional dice of damage. Plus, if they're one of the main starters and you have Blaze, Overgrow, or Torrent going, you're going to get another additional die of damage. So we're talking like potentially, 4d8, 4d10 damage. It's going to start getting a little nutty. But these Z moves, the way that I am looking at them is basically a guaranteed hit, 3d12 damage unaffected by resistances and immunities, because Alpha Klawf is going to be a little bit funky. And you're going to skip your next turn. But it's a guaranteed 3d12 damage. So could be 36, could be 3. Because Z moves to me should be a big hit or miss with downside in terms of damage. But they should hit. We're not going to do megas for this one. We did a mega a Z move and a Terra Crystal in the sort of like beta Klawf raid, and it was a little bit funky. It didn't work well. I wasn't happy with the mechanics of it. And we'll get into that in a future lab. But I figured I would throw that sort of stuff in here just to show you guys how I would do it in action. So we'll see. But Z moves, 3d12. I'm going to make the players come up with something unique and interesting for their Z move. I'm not going to hold them to sort of knowing everything right off the bat. I want it to be something unique to their character, their team member, all that fun stuff. But let's talk about the crab of the hour, the Alpha Mega Klawf. It does have a Terra Crystal on its gigantic head, so it's going to do an AoE Terra Beam, individual attack rolls at everybody, and it's going to start out as a Dragon type, because that's really going to shut down pretty much everybody. It's going to be resistant to a lot of things, so we'll probably make one of the Klawfs that crawls out will probably be Ice type. And they might not want to take it because they're like, well, ice is bad against rock, but that's just to catch them for thinking too small. But then when a dragon type Super Klawf walks out and suddenly you've got an ice type Terra Beam that's going to do super effective damage, it's going to be a lot of fun. So he's going to start out as dragon type. He's going to have some basic crab claw moves, but I'm probably going to keep him focused more on using this Terra Beam because that's sort of the new hotness. And then after a round as a dragon type, he's going to flip and probably be poison. Because again, I want to keep the players on their toes. And I want to make sure that if somebody's playing Fuecoco or if they're all the starters, that dragon doesn't just completely resist them the entire time, because that kind of sucks. So I'll probably switch him to poison. I know that's not a thing that Terras can do, but I got to have my own fun with it. I got to keep my players confused and afraid. So once it's been poison type for a round, it's going to switch. It'll become ground type. And then after that, it's going to go back to dragon. So there's no meaning to dragon, poison, or ground. I just thought they would be unique types. They don't get seen a lot, and they kind of get glossed over. So I figured, let's throw them on the Terra Crystals. Let's just see how it goes. That way everybody has a chance to be super effective on at least one stage. And then the poison one is just neutral damage to and from everybody. Except, oh wait, no, I'm forgetting because Fido is fairy type. So poison will actually be really good against that because the dragon one's going to be unable to damage Fido, which will be kind of funny. Because I will actually do that. But I'm going to kind of ignore Klawf resistances and stuff like that, but I will give the dragon type immunity to Fido because we want to reward somebody for picking not one of the starters. So that's basically our Klawf raid. If you're wondering, like, hey, that seemed really disjointed, and how the heck are you going to do this? That is the process, my friends. There's a reason I've been avoiding this topic for a long time. It's because once you know the process that goes into the preparation of a thing, you'll realize how little preparation goes into it. I am very much an improv DM. We talk about it all the time. The way I handle one-shots is I'll throw out a baseline skeleton of how I want things to go, and the players are the engine. So hopefully they'll kind of figure something out and get their way through it. If they're struggling, I might throw them a couple extra things. I will probably give them some potions to use at the beginning. That's something I am wont to do. Potions for a one-shot, I have them just heal 20 hit points. My goal is not for somebody to get knocked out and then have to just sit there. So if you're waiting for like a super lethal one-shot, it's probably not this one. This one's just going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a couple pals sitting around a table playing a one-shot. So that's it. That's the raid. I get super late spoiler warning for the raid that comes out next Monday. If you didn't want to know that, I'm sorry. I'll probably put a little spoiler tag there. It's kind of hard to spoil something that's like barely being announced. But anyways, I've rambled on long enough. We're in the outro already. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this. I do hope that you will go check out the one-shot when it's live, and you guys can kind of see how we got from this sort of skeleton outline to that one-shot. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you guys would handle stuff like this, and I'll catch you in the next thing, or maybe just on Thursday. Either way, thanks, gang.
Bye-bye.